What's up, everyone? This is Adam with RANTSIT and Sweaty calves coming back at you with yet another video. Today we'll be talking about the next Punisher should be a black veteran, says co-creator Gerry Conway. Now, in case you don't know, I just covered something in regards to the Punisher not too long ago. It was in relation to Gerry Conway having a problem with authorities and police officers using the Punisher logo as a symbol of justice when they're, punishing criminals for their crimes. Punishing people like, Black Lives Matter, the organization, and a bunch of other leftist lunatics who are running around enacting socialistic and communistic ideologies and acting incredibly criminal along the way. And he took offense to police officers doing their job while also wearing the Punisher logo because he's a leftist lunatic. Now he's saying that simply having a white character as the Punisher is not okay. Look at this. It says right here, reinventing the Punisher as a black veteran would make him a stronger representation of the current cultural zeitgeist, co-creator Gerry Conway says. So basically he's trying to say in this article, let's look through it a little bit. Punisher co-creator Gerry Conway thinks the militaristic anti-hero needs to evolve to stay relevant in the 21st century, and ideally there should be a black veteran in the next iteration. There will come a time like in the 80s that the character will be rebooted, and turn into something new. Gerry Conway said on an episode Design Podcast 99% Invisible, devoted to the Punisher's famous skull logo. My personal preference would be that the next generation of Punisher would be a black vet, who comes back and faces the issues the minorities face in the world today. Let's talk about how ridiculous that is. Back in World War II, let's go back to World War II, or after the Civil War, or after World War I, when black veterans would come home, they would still be faced with incredible opposition and oppression because of the fact that they were black. It was a horrible time in America's history. Yet, the people who served alongside of those black veterans and those black war heroes would actually wind up being closer to them. And it was through that unification of black and white war heroes in the middle of a combative situation like World War II, when the entire world was on the line, and pretty much every other ethnicity that was within America's cultural zeitgeist. It was it was through that and through those relations and through a couple of people being determined not to be oppressed anymore that we were able to get past all this. I thought that we left all this crap behind in the 60s and 70s, Now it's 2022 and Gerry Conway, the creator of Punisher, says, well, I need to be racist and make sure that a black man gets the job next because white people are evil. That's basically what he's saying. If you just take that one sentence, now it might be out of context, I haven't listened to the podcast, but if this article is telling the truth, and this is a very left-leaning organization here, CBR, if they're telling the truth, then Gerry Conway is basically saying we need a black veteran because black people are more oppressed today than when they were slaves, or when they were racistly, bigotedly treated in World War II era, right? Gerry Conway is basically saying that black people being a minority in America and still having all the same rights as white people and all the same rights as any other ethnicity that's in America, and actually being given more opportunities simply because of the color of their skin, is somehow more oppressed than the black people of oppressive times like World War II era American history, all the way back to when slavery was first introduced. And even then, if you know your history, you know that the first slave owner in America was actually a black guy. So slavery was never a black versus white thing. It was just one person was sold into slavery over another thing. But eventually it got turned into black versus white through democratic ideologies and leftist politics. And it's been pervasive ever since. Ever since black people got freedom to vote, to live their lives just the same as you and I, ever since black people got, ever since the 1960s, during the cultural movement that got black people to be on equal footing with white people, which is a great thing, the Democrats and leftist lunatics have been pushing this narrative that black people are somehow less. And that's terrible. And now, it's essentially it's now Gerry Conway is saying we need to make a black character. We need to make a black version of a white character exclusively because I think that black people are more oppressed today than they were back when they were being oppressed and treated racistly. That's Gerry Conway. That's the creator of this. That's what the creator of Punisher is saying. That's what the creator of this story is saying. That's what the guy, Gerry Conway, the creator of Punisher, is saying. The next Punisher has to be black. That's his reasoning. Because he thinks somehow that black people are more oppressed today than they were when they were actually being beaten in the streets. I find that incredibly offensive. I find that massively offensive. I think that people from World War II era history, or before, or people who were oppressed during the times of slavery, would probably be a little bit offended at Gerry Conway saying that black people are being oppressed today, and systemically oppressed. I think that they would find that incredibly offensive because of how much opportunity is at the hands of every person and every individual in America. Not just white people, not just Asian people, but every ethnicity in America. And to suggest that you need to turn a character who is white into a black character, or create a legacy-style arc where Punisher is actually just a title that can be passed down from one generation to the next, or to somehow say that Frank Castle will be made a black person exclusively because you believe that black people are more oppressed today than they were 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, is incredibly insensitive and incredibly ill-advised and incredibly idiotic. I think Gerry Conway is a leftist lunatic who is incredibly stupid. And this right here, his suggestion to make a white character black exclusively because he doesn't understand current social economic politics, is all the evidence you need to just put to death Marvel Comics. Just avoid buying anything Marvel. At this point, avoid buying anything mainstream in terms of comics, okay? Because they're poisoning the well every single time they make something about social justice, and it's the most agitatingly stupid thing that they could possibly do. This right here, the next Punisher should be a black veteran, says co-creator Gerry Conway, exclusively, because he thinks that black people are more oppressed today than they were back in the World War II era, or that somehow the second they step foot on American soil, people are throwing garbage at them. No, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It does not happen. And that's just let this Marvel Comics company die. Just let DC Comics the company die. I'm going to keep covering this stuff because it's absolutely agitating and I have to get this stuff out of my head. Otherwise it's going to fester and it's just going to boil over into my daily life. But for any viewers who are watching these videos, let Marvel Comics and DC Comics die. Just let the mainstream comics industry die. Replace them with your own stories. Replace them with third-party stories, independently created stories. Check out something like the Rippaverse, which is coming out by Young Rippa. Check something out by just look for indie comics created by small creators who are actually trying to make good stories instead of having to push political ideologies, and then support them. Don't support these stupid major media corporations like DC Comics and Marvel Comics anymore, because they're ruining and poisoning the well for all future comic nerds. Everyone who wants to make a comic, everyone who wants to make something out of their lives, everyone who wants to do something better, everyone who wants to make a story or make a comic or make a graphic novel that people could enjoy and people could just sit down and read and love the crap out of, these people, Marvel Comics and DC Comics, the company, are poisoning the well for all future creators and systematically oppressing people who actually want to make good stories in favor of getting people who want to make crap stories for political ideology and political purposes. So let these major movie companies die, let these major comic companies die, just let them die off. Just let them go bankrupt, let them fall apart, and then take it from there. Anyways, that's been me. Sorry for the rant. I'm trying really hard not to yell right now. Have a good day. Have a great rest of the week. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with your friends if you enjoyed it. Alright, that's it. And again, have a great day and a great rest of the week.